And very much at the same point, we are done with Naoto's story, which means we can move on to the next story, the other big brain. Late November in the year 2010. The darkness fell without warning. At the same time, the previously busy examination room felt so silent that the man's ears hurt.
What happened?
He called towards the back of the room, but no answer came. After working for public safety for over a decade, he thought little could faze him anymore. But this was uncomfortably alien. Yeah, this is kind of in a way, this is kind of a natural progression from Naoto's story, because we go here again. It was no ordinary blackout. If it were, the faint lights from machines running on battery power, such as cell phones, would remain. But the silence disturbed him even more. He hadn't heard so much as a single cry. As he looked around, he saw a spot in the darkness. Something was giving off an eerie glow, as if painted in incandescent pigments. Oh dear. This isn't just any darkness, this is advanced darkness. Yeah, pretty much. Anyone who's played Persona 3 will be familiar with this setup. The shining spot was revealed as a small, strangely decorated box. One that the man had only just delivered to the forensic unit.
Forensics team! What the hell is...
He called out, still squinting at the shadow of a person he could see at the window before him. Yeah, all too familiar, yeah. By the way, extremely excited at the Persona 3 remake. But as the shape resolved, he saw that it was not a person's shadow at all. He had no words to describe it. At first glance, it seemed to be a coffin. Indeed, that is what it was shaped like. But he had never seen a coffin standing upright, tall as an adult, shining in like a dark crystal. Yet that was clearly what the crystalline mass was, squatting in the spot where a window clerk normally stood. And upon closer inspection, it wasn't the only one. At desks in front of the evidence shelf next to the reference computer, the objects towered everywhere, as if they had taken the place of humans. Definitely excited for that, especially if they bring in some of the quality of life stuff from P5. Yeah, that would be great. And I certainly hope that they do the same, that they do what I really want them to do, that they keep the whole thing of the answer chapter while still retaining the whole gender selection thing from Persona 3 Portable.
What are these?
A chill ran down the man's spine. They're people, was the thought that instinctively came to mind. Was this the reason he couldn't hear anyone else's voice? Was it because everyone but him was...
What's going on?
Once the fear had set in, it wasn't easy to shake off. His familiar office was starting to look like a grotesque netherworld. That'd be nice, but I think people might be happy with getting a remastered version of the answer. Yeah, that might be nice too, but I've been hearing poor things about the Persona 3 remaster. Like, apparently there's some stuff they really messed up on. Though, honestly, it did look good to me, but I didn't play far enough to get all of the, to see all of the problems. Plus, original P3PO was obviously on a small screen, so if there was, I didn't notice anything specific with the whole AI scaling thing that they were talking about. He felt quite sure that he had to get out. Quickly, he turned and grabbed the knob to the door through which he had just entered, but
What the?
it didn't budge. It wasn't that the door was locked, preventing the knob from turning the latch. The knob was completely frozen in place.
Is anyone here? Hey, let me out!
The man slammed his fist against the door, yelling in desperation. But the sensation he felt was his fist when his fist impacted the surface wasn't that of hitting a door. It felt completely at odds with what he saw, as if a picture of a door had been drawn on a solid wall. Imagine being in that situation, my God. It was then that the man noticed that another light, similar in color that emanating from similar in color to that emanating from the box, could be seen on part of his hand as he swung it forward. Yeah, really. Honestly, I'm surprised he's this calm. It was a ring. And suddenly he remembered. When he brought in the small box, he found several bizarre ring-shaped objects within, each with an element imprinted on it. They belonged to teenagers. They kept yelling about being chosen by the spirit of the earth, and that they could summon the spirit of the planet itself. Wow, that's a throwback. While handing it over to forensics, he suspected that they might be rings. To collect the theory, he put one on, and now that ring was emanating the same eerie light as the box. So, what have we learned? Though he still had no idea what was going on, it was immediately apparent that it was directly related to the current situation. 9 rings given to the Lord of Man, but another one was forged in secret. The man grabbed the ring with sweat-slicked fingers and tugged, ready to pull off his own finger if necessary. But just at that moment...
Take that off right now.
What?
The man can't help but gasp. He looked around, but could sense no one inside the room with him. Where had the voice come
I'll
from?
be there to rescue you shortly. Calm yourself and wait there.
When the man calmed himself, he realized that it wasn't just a voice. The sensation was indescribable, and it was distinctly unlike hearing with one's ears.
Who's there?
Oh, pardon me. This is Mitsuru Kirijo. We met earlier.
She just casually introduces herself. Kirijo. He did not know a Kirijo. He did know a Kirijo. No, change the context of that entirely. And it was she who brought the strange small box. And that wasn't all he knew. The Kirijos were a wicked family who used their fortune and influence as a shield, a constant frustration to the police. Despite that, the man couldn't help but feel relief wash over him. Perhaps he might survive this after all.
Well, I appreciate the help. Just hurry.
After getting the muttered words out, he sank to the floor, the door at his back. Mitsuru Kirijo, if he recalled correctly, she was the eldest daughter of the Kirijo group's founding family. Isn't she the only daughter? I mean, as far as I know, she doesn't have any siblings. Maybe it was expanded upon in some spin-off or something. He noted that her voice had been far calmer than his, despite the situation they were both in. He sensed a measure of trustworthiness from her. And to think, it had been merely an hour that he was asking himself why such a young girl had been chosen as head of the Kirijo group at all. The digital clock on the corner of the desk quietly announced the arrival of 10 in the morning. Normally, most of the staff would be out and about by now, but the entire police department was in turmoil today. It was only to be expected, with a key figure from the Kirijo group visiting on unusual business. The Kirijo group was a major trading firm, synonymous with Japan. They had links to all areas of business, as not a day could go by in the city without hearing their name. The clock had struck 10, the clock that had struck 10 bore the logo of Kirijo Electronics, and KJ was the carrier of the cell phone provided to every member of the force. A few days ago, the same Kirijo group had made a seemingly insane proposal. The document was hundreds of pages, but a brief summary would read, "We wish to collaborate with the police on an unofficial department and for eliminating monsters."
It does happen from time to time. Famous businessmen end up advocating cultish nonsense in pursuit of their ambitions.
I mean, that is kind of on the nose considering current world events, but to be fair, Mitsuru is not advocating out of simple nonsense. Upon consideration, it was decided that the Kirijo group should be invited in and to give their pitch. Of course, there was no intention of spending tax money on the outlandish proposal. The police's interest is in humoring the Kirijo group lay elsewhere. The Kirijo group had offered an incentive whereby if the police agreed to the meeting, they would provide a detailed list of the ergonomics research lab's artifacts, as well as actual samples. It was this that drove the official's decision. For there had been dark rumors bandied about the Kirijo group over the last 10 years. So you knew these things were in a research lab, and you still put one of them on. You didn't think there was anything strange about that at all. Still, while a family-run business, some said that old man Koetsu Kirijo had delved into paranormal research and was performing inhumane experiments. That is putting it lightly. Nameless NPCs are not known for their intelligence. That's true. The police collected enough evidence to test the rumor and had prepared many times to support an investigation. But every time the investigation came to nothing due to the group exerting hidden pressure, frustrating those working on the case to no end. The investigation's prime target was the infamous Ergo Research, the Kirijo Ergonomics Research Lab. Exposing the Kirijo group's dark side, it has been a dream of the public safeties for 10 years now. And now Kirijo seemed willing to hand over Ergo Research's tightly guarded secret it's on a silver platter. No one knew the reason for the sudden about face, but neither did anyone think of turning them down. They agreed to the summit not to hear out whatever proposal Kirijo was offering, but as a stepping stone toward unearthing their past crimes. Time passed and the agreed upon time in the afternoon came. The man was tasked with watching over and bringing in the artifacts from the Kirijo group. Though he would not speak with the guests, the police's plan afforded him a major responsibility, one that gave him something like a leading role. It wasn't long before the Kirijo car arrived in the underground Porte Cochere. I think that's how it would be pronounced. And that is French, right? The staff there to receive the guests only shrugged at the long black limousine that would have turned heads on main roads. One of the youngest recruits looked towards the man and asked the question.
What's with that car?
But that was the least of the surprises in store. When the Kirijo group representatives stepped out of the limousine, she was revealed to be a beautiful young woman, no older than a university student. Not only that, she had attendance dressed in what could only be described as maid uniforms. All of them were young women, roughly her age. The scene mesmerized the various dignitaries presented to greet her.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am Mitsuru Kirijo, representing the Kirijo group. It's nice to meet you.
Her brisk greeting radiated poise. From there, she shook hands with the assembled dignitaries in a manner that showed she was no stranger to social gatherings.
She's the company rep? Really?
The young recruit who was sneaking looks out of the corner of his eye muttered in spite of himself.
Their proposal said the rep who's coming today would be the leader of this new unit, but...
Think about it for a second. If she was she was a representative at her age, she obviously did something to get there. I mean, realistically, she inherited the role, but still.
I thought it was supposed to be some hardcore armed response team, and she's leading it? Well, I guess it's better than some meathead.
This is funny considering Akihiko is sort of the meathead of the group. Or would Junpei more fit that role?
Shut up and hold your position.
But in truth, the man felt the same way. Certainly, the monster extermination unit would never be incorporated, but even if it were, he was sure this wisp of a girl could never do such work. Oh boy! How wrong you are! No, I say Akihiko, Junpei is the mascot and the dumb costume. Yeah, that is true. Eventually, the dignitaries entered the agency along with Miss Kirijo. All of them wore lopsided smiles due to the young beauty's unexpected appearance, but that would do for now. The dignitaries were only there to receive her. Their true objective was loaded in the truck and behind the limousine. The documents and artifacts of Ergo research.
Start bringing them in. Roger, sir.
So, this is SCP-104, this is SCP-3279, and do not touch SCP-666. Just don't. under any circumstances. At the man's signal, his trained subordinate surrounded the Kirijo truck. They formed a line, smoothly passing boxes from man to man onto the building. The articles were of various sizes, with even a few that came in oversized metallic containers for aerial transport. The Kirijo group had warned them not to handle these things carelessly under any explanation until any explanations were forthcoming. And yet you still did it. And yet you still did it. What the fuck, man? But in truth, the department was already prepared to begin the forensic investigation of the object and even send them to the lab. You morons.
Are you sure it's okay for us to open these? The instructions said not to.
It won't be a real investigation if we let them hamstring our procedures.
I mean, he's not exactly wrong, but first of all, it would be inadmissible evidence in court. Because they were specifically told not to. They were not given permission to, therefore they shouldn't have. He's not wrong, but he's still an idiot, yeah. But second of all, there's probably a reason why they're in these thick containers and shit, dude.
Besides, I can't think of anything they could send us that we couldn't handle.
Famous last words.
Unless there's real monsters inside these things.
I will take foreshadowing for 500, please. The articles were brought in silent. The operation only lasted about 15 minutes. The man himself received the last item, the size of a jewelry box, and checked the truck to make sure nothing went overlooked before closing it up. Foreshadowing for 500. Oh, look, it's a daily double. That done, he turned and walked away towards the forensic room. Try though he might to maintain his composure, he couldn't contain the excitement he felt. For 10 years, the darkness of the Kirijo group had been a frustrating legend, like mist between the department's fingers. Their chance to investigate and expose them was here at last. And even the slightest evidence matched the DNA of those who had, and if even the slightest evidence matched the DNA of those who had gone missing, or the victims of the unsolved cases, victory would be theirs. The man tried to tamp down on his exhilaration and took another look at the small box he held. There was no upper lid on the box. A pedestal-like protrusion at its center held a number of small circular trinkets. Their usage was completely unknown. What kind of research produced these? Just as the man was about to hand the box to the window clerk, he saw a wedding ring on the clerk's finger and came to a realization.
Are these rings?
We're not sure yet.
You didn't even know what they were, and yet you still put them on. You didn't even know what they were, and you still put them on. Is this how police are in America? Because really, what the fuck? Mishandling that thing of evidence. If that was evidence, that would be completely inadmissible to court, because now it has your grubby fingerprints all over it. The man put on some protective latex gloves and tried one of the objects on. Okay, he put on gloves, but still. For all you know, that could have some unknown tech that could cut off your finger. After looking at it from every angle, its color and shape seemed to be nothing but ordinary. If it was meant to be jewelry, it wasn't very attractive. The man couldn't picture a scientist in lab coat slaving away in a lab to create things like this. He went full dumbass and went, "Ooh, shiny!" Because I can't believe that anyone who would be in an investigation team would be this fucking stupid. The moment that unlikely possibility came to mind, the man felt somewhat embarrassed by his ignorance of fashion and accessories. But as soon as he reached for the small box to put the ring back inside, darkness suddenly fell.
Please step away from the door.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. The voice echoing in the man's mind and brought him back to reality. He took a few steps away from the door as directed and stood ready. Step away from the door. The more he thought about it, the stranger the order seemed. How did she know he was so close to the door when she wasn't even in the room? Suddenly, a chill filled the area. In mere seconds, the entire door was coated in white. She literally froze the door off.
Where'd this ice come from?
It had frosted over. The man couldn't believe his eyes, but the evidence was there in front of him. He could hear a slight knocking sound, followed by a crack forming in the center. The door buckled under its own weight and crumbled with a sound like it was like building blocks being pushed over. Standing just past was the Carrijo woman. She's rich; she can afford it. She walked over to the man with exquisite nonchalance. At her side was one of the maids she brought.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
We did give you fair warning, but it seems to have gone unheeded.
I'd like to imagine that, Mitsuru just stayed behind and was like, these dumbasses are not going to listen to me. I better stay behind in case something happens. The man looked toward the ring shining on his finger.
This happened because we touched that box? What is this thing?
You shouldn't have even touched it in the first place.
That ring gives its bearer an unstable form of pseudo-potential and allows anyone to experience the Dark Hour.
The Dark Hour?
The box itself seems to be a failed recreation of the Dark Hour. The effect radius is small, and it malfunctions when improperly handled.
The Dark Hour. He remembered that phrase coming up in documents the Carrijo group had sent. If he recalled correctly, it was defined as a hidden time, unable to be experienced by normal people, a time where everything stood still. According to the documents, it seemed to have occurred every night at midnight for about 10 years, until spring 2010, as if it was forcing its way into normal time. Before now, it seemed like pure fantasy. But could the silent darkness be the very same thing?
So you're saying those stories in that document, that occult-sounding stuff was actually for real?
At that moment, a voice suddenly echoed from beyond the hallway, past the broken door.
Who's there?
The man reflexively called out an alarm, realizing that the fear had not yet died down. What emerged from the darkness was the young recruit who had greeted the guests earlier and had been helping with bringing in the artifacts. He was staggering as if severely drunk.
Chief!
I just drank a whole case. I just drank a whole case of tequila. It was a bad idea.
Hey, are you all right?
The man started to rush to his side, but the creature woman silently stopped him. She stood between the two, as if protecting the man.
He's my...
Before he could finish, a surprising change overtook the recruit. The recruit fell to the ground with an agonizing scream. A black tar-like substance began overflowing from his every orifice. Ew!
What?
The ooze spread unnaturally across the ground and cohered into the glob. It rose up like a beast raising its head, and what looked like claws began to form. Its appearance showed clear signs that it possessed some malevolent will. I gotta admit, that kind of does look terrifying. The man thought again about the Kirijo Group's initial proposal. We wish to collaborate with the police on an unofficial department for eliminating monsters. Without a doubt, this was what they were referring to. And the name that came up again and again was...
This is a shadow.
That it is. It's a monster that dwells in every person's heart. They usually can't manifest themselves this way, but it's quite common to see it happen during the dark hour.
So the research to make this happen artificially. That's what Kirijo has been experimenting with.
Yep! Because Koetsu Kirijo was just that much of an asshole.
That did seem to be the extent of it. At the start.
At the start. The man couldn't prevent himself from shuddering, imagining the implications of her statement. Oh my god! Like, I'm gonna say this right now, kudos to the artwork. With a second roar, a half-liquefied shadow suddenly took the form of a fell beast. But where the face should have been was nothing but a mask, giving it the bizarre appearance of two creatures stitched together. The young woman, for her part, seemed not in the least perturbed.
Kikuno, my things, please.
The maid stooped and reached to reach something. The man wasn't sure where she had been carrying it, but she placed a sword in her master's hand. The blade was specially shaped, similar to the design of a fencing saber.
Going to fight it?
Stay back. This will all be over soon.
To you, this was the day that changed your life. To me, it is Tuesday. At that moment, as if understanding her conversation, the shadow squared itself up and leapt towards the young woman. Its speed matched its beastly appearance. In the darkness of the room, the man found it difficult simply keeping his eye on it. Also, by the way, you saw her freeze a friggin' door. Dude, this is clearly beyond your pay grade. Let her do your thing, yeah. The young woman did not move. Her sword remained lowered in the face of the shadow's advance. Of course, thought the man, an amateur like her could never react in time. However...
Tamisha.
What made you think she was an amateur? At a word from the young woman, some unseen force slammed the shadow against the wall. The man momentarily doubted his own eyes. For it hadn't been the woman who repelled the monster, but the silhouette that suddenly appeared behind her. It looked as though the being enveloped in sublime light contrasted the shadow's dark glow. Was a Contrasting the shadow's dark glow was a woman wearing a majestic dress. The silhouette held up a hand toward the grounded shadow. Once again, the man felt freezing air fill the room. And with that, the shadow stopped moving. Frost crystallized all over it, turning it into an ice sculpture within seconds. Only then did the woman swing her sword in her hand. 2 moves! Took her all of 2 moves to beat that thing. A white gleam that should be arched, I think. A white gleam arched through the air. Upon impact, the frozen enemy shattered, and it had been crystallized as sugar rather than ice. The victory was so one-sided that the man hesitated to call it a battle.
Are you all right?
The young woman turned towards the man. Yep, this is not her first rodeo. The sound of her boots hitting the floor gave him the jarring realization that she hadn't moved a single step during the fray. Seeing that he was at a loss for words, she gave him a gentle smile. It was all too much for the man. He actually felt relieved to be protected by the small woman. One thing was obvious. She had been through countless battles, much like the one he just witnessed. Yeah, she is the most experienced member of SEAS.
Your fallen employee's life is in no danger, but he'll be very weak. Make sure he gets to a hospital. Should I make the arrangements?
Also, probably should have him treated for frostbite. That freeze was probably very nasty.
No, I should at least handle that. It is a public security matter.
With a nod, the young woman approached the small box and manipulated it in a way he couldn't quite match. The eerie yellow-green light began to fade. Moments later, the silence and darkness faded too. The world had been restored. The man felt his body become suddenly lighter, causing him to breathe a sigh of relief. I gotta wonder, did this happen before or after Naoto's meeting with him? He hadn't realized until the pressure was gone and that the air had been suffocating, as if he had been underwater. Because it doesn't make sense that he went higher. I would imagine that this is before. Yeah, it's weird that he would have them investigated if he experienced this before, unless he was thinking this was some kind of high-class con or something. But at the same time, the time wouldn't match if it was, because the shadow operatives were clearly a thing for a while. And this is clearly before the shadow operatives were formed. There was a stir of movement in the room. The forensics team and the assistants looked at the man and young woman perplexed. The man took a quick look around. Fragments of the shattered door were strewn about. A young public security worker was lying unconscious nearby. And their Kirijo guest, who had entered without anyone noticing, held in her hand a drawn sword.
Shocked too if I were them.
Fair. It occurred to him that if normal people couldn't sense the dark hour, the sudden change in circumstances may have seemed to them like some magic trick. Either that, or he was investigating specifically. He wanted to investigate Mitsuru to make sure she wasn't in fact responsible for these events.
Excuse me, but this place is off limits to all unauthorized personnel.
Kudos to this guy for telling Mitsuru that while she has a sword.
Hey, what's going on here?
The forensic staff looked at the man helplessly.
Right. We had a little emergency.
Oh.
That aside, halt all examination of the relics they brought in. We'll wait for further instructions from the Kirijo group.
Should have done that before.
Huh? But you said...
If there are any boxes that are closed, don't force them open. Not if you don't want to come face to face with monsters.
Leaving the frowning forensics team behind him, the man quickly went into the hallway with the Kirijo woman.
I have to thank you for your help. And about the conference, I'll join in as well. It's been arranged so nothing you say would get through to the higher-ups.
If the young woman was surprised at what amounted to a confession of betrayal, she didn't show
Are
it.
you saying you will reconsider your plans?
I can't overlook anything as serious as this. I wouldn't be doing my job as public security if I did. But make no mistake, the things I saw today are proof of the sins the Kirijo group has committed. They can't be punished under the law, but now that they're known, atonement will be made in some shape or form.
Indeed. I never intended anything less.
You really put one over on us this time. Oh, there's no need to be coy. What happened today was no accident, was it? We'd never have believed the reports unless we saw it in person. That's why such a dangerous box had no lid. Am I wrong?
I would say more that you guys being idiots were well within her expectation.
There was no lid. That's not possible. That box was classified as risk level 3. It should have been securely fastened.
The young woman fell silent, then gave them a walking silently behind her a look.
Kikuno.
The maid continued without the slightest sign of remorse and left her master behind. But the man and the young woman sighed at once.
Us guys in public security have a reputation for being tough. But it seems like you guys are no slouches yourselves.
Dude, you can't even begin to match her level. The summit was meant to be a perfunctory refusal. The summit that was meant to be a perfunctory refusal took an unexpected turn. Promises were made to continue the talks. 6 months passed. Yeah, so this definitely was before. After many opportunities to show the actual samples of the to the dignitaries were set up, the proposed special unit was established and mostly the form Kirijo requested. The security department, the Shadow Response Unit. It was an inauguration of the special unit that would, in time, be nicknamed the Shadow Operatives. Every time I look at this, I see, like, initially, yeah, there's an awesome picture, then I just see Junpei slouching like that. Indeed, the Shadow Operatives. I'm quite fond of the name. Not that I normally pay much heed to these things, but in this case, I admitted to being pleased. It started as sarcasm on part of the higher-ranked personnel from the police. It could be taken to mean those who deal with shadows, but the real meaning is those who operate in the shadows. I mean, both are technically correct. Not only is the unit unofficial, no, we have the difficult to credit job of exterminating monsters. Mostly, I suspect there was a dig at the group. At a group that disturbed the expected peaceful years of the older personnel's retirement. The Shadow Operative but Shadow Operative could be one who does unrewarded, albeit crucial work for society. It's a name truly befitting of this organization's goals. We're approaching the first anniversary of the Shadow Operative's establishment. Though we're still at the level of basic investigation and laying groundwork, it seems a full-scale case has arisen.
Fighting is not our first option, but I'd be more reassured with you there. We have a general idea of where it was taken, the Inaba area, where there were reports of suspected shadow activity last year.
Good as it is to hear from an odd, reliable friend, I limit the call to a quick exchange of
I'll
information.
send you the precise location later. Sorry to call when you've just returned from a trip, but I'm relying on your assistance.
Yeah, this is when she was. When she was calling Akihiko. I close my cell and turn towards my colleague.
He's only just returned and he's going directly to the location from the airport. Akihiko never changes.
The man I was on the phone with just now is Akihiko Sanada. He's one of our non-permanent staff. Akihiko is an excellent persona user, but beyond that, he's a skilled boxer. He's a friend of mine from high school who fought the shadows alongside me. I admire his strict determination to never neglect his training, but the extreme lengths he goes to can be rather inconvenient. After entering college, she accepted my invitation to be one of the founding Shadow Operatives, but it was his actions afterward that went above and beyond. Sure, I'll join, but if I'm going to use my strength professionally, I want to get my skills to a level I'm happy with first. Thus began his training expedition. He's not only wandering the country, he's traveling the entire world. I can't decide whether to be dumbfounded or impressed by his dedication to training. All of this to say that he only just returned to Japan to take part in this operation. I gave a wry smile and leaned back in my chair. Seeing me relax, the girl watching nearby smiles. This is Igus, known for her blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. P3 best girl! She's a sweet girl on the outside, but she has what it takes to be an important member of the squad.
Will we be able to find Labris? My sister?
When I look over at Igus, her eyes are cast downward with a worried expression.
Able to save her. Isn't that what you really want to ask?
She must have known once I called Akihiko in as backup. There is a possibility that we will have to fight Labris. Knowing that, it's not a great leap to imagine that in the worst case, she may have to be destroyed. And alas, it's true. If all else fails, and our security and our safety is at risk, with no other way to stop her, that option is on the table. Still.
Don't worry. As I mentioned to Akihiko, fighting Labris is not our priority. The reason I formed this Shadow Operative team is to save lives. We will find her, whatever it takes, and bring her back. We can do this.
Yes. I'm sorry to be so pessimistic.
Those feelings you have for Labris, you should tell her when you see her.
I will.
The monitor is showing certain data under multiple redundant encryptions. Kirijo Ergonomics Research Lab, confidential matters. There is, in fact, the reason I'm reviewing these materials that are normally security concealed. Because 2 days ago, on May 1st, I was unexpectedly dragged into a serious incident. The passenger plane was taking I was taking to Kagoshima was hijacked. There hasn't been a domestic hijacking for 10 years. The top brass of the police, afraid to make any mistakes, sent in the shadow operatives, and the case itself was resolved quickly, and all the culprits arrested, thanks to P3 Best Girl. None of the passengers were harmed either. But the hijackers' true motive wasn't terrorism or political demands, as one would expect. I was surprised to find that they were really after my cargo. It was a sealed box from the ergonomics research lab. We were transporting it to Yakushima on that flight. None thought that the risky hijacking could have been in pursuit of just the cargo. And as a result, one of the objects was stolen. The arrested suspects are all in police custody, but none of them have any memory of carrying out the crime. Someone was pulling their strings, and very probably using uncommon methods. Considering that Puppet Master was targeting shadow-related cargo, I doubt they'll be easy to deal with. As for what was stolen, I just mentioned its name a moment ago. The 5th generation anti-shadow suppression weapon Labris is an older model from 2 generations ago. Some shadow-related ergo research documents were lost in an accident. We know little about Labris. She is an android, most likely a female version, just like Igus. But instead of a weapons loadout, she seemed to have been fitted with some kind of experimental equipment. That's all we know. Still, thanks to our collaborator's quick wit, the escaping vehicle was traced to the end system. It wasn't easy, but we managed to pinpoint its location. It was headed for the city of Inaba, where there may have been shadow activity last year. Once the preparations to depart are complete, I'll head there myself. My mind wanders a bit. Though I was unaware of them, the shadow of the sins committed in the Kirijo name is still so painful, 10 years on, that I sometimes want to avert my eyes. But now is not the time to be bound by the past. Now is the time to act. I suddenly notice that Iga has been staring at me worriedly. I give her a smile and stand up decisively. We are pulling up to Yaso Inaba, the central town of Inaba. Okay, I'm going to quickly take a bio break. And I'm going to turn on the light while I'm at it. Give me a sec, everyone. Alright, I'm back. Though it's the central town, the main street seems nearly deserted, and there's virtually no activity to be seen through the car windows. It was confirmed that the vehicle transporting Labris was abandoned here, so our first move would be to confirm the situation. Or so I thought. I attempt to ignore the rude stares of people trying to get a look inside the car. Focusing on instead on the scent to my tea. People keep crowding around whenever we park. We've had to move it a number of times already. We didn't get a moment's peace until the car had reached the junkyard on the outskirts of town. As I try to keep from sighing, Aya speaks up from her seat in front of me.
Mitsuru-san, our activities are supposed to be undercover, correct?
Yes.
For undercover missions, it will be necessary to keep all personnel and vehicles from being noticed.
Right.
Mitsuru-san, may I say something that I've been meaning to say for a while now?
No.
I just love how blunt that is. Like, may I say this thing I've been meaning to say for a while now? No.
Understood.
Aigus's poker face is a perfect blank. Though I understand what she's getting at. I've actually wanted to say something along those lines to the people around me for a while. Still, it would be galling to hear it from someone else right now. So bringing the limousine wasn't even her choice.
All I told them was to give us a car with enough space.
They kind of went overboard with that.
Our contact has arrived.
The man approaching us, so someone who cooperated, whose cooperation I specifically requested. His name is Detective Kurosawa. Before I can welcome him, Aiga speaks up.
My, this was not our designated meeting area, yet he has discovered us.
You want to know how I did it?
Lately, it feels that whenever Aiga wants to voice her opinion to me, she intentionally puts on the robot act. They mentioned this at the lab. That if Aiga still speaks in that stiff former manner, either she's getting too human and is developing habits, or she's doing it on purpose. Honestly.
I appreciate your cooperation, Detective Kurosawa.
Long time no see, miss. And I guess, was it?
Indeed. It has been a while.
Detective Kurosawa was an officer at a police box near the school we attended 3 years ago. He was shunned for cooperating with us and got busted back down to officer. But now that the shadow operatives are officially recognized, he's in their good graces again. A man who can be trusted beyond the confines of his station to solve a case, even going as so far as to bend the rules. He's a rare breed. Detective Kurosawa's expression has softened while he makes small talk with Aiga, which makes me realize that this may be the first time he's seen Aiga in her combat form.
I shouldn't make you stand while we talk. Please, get in.
Sorry. I haven't seen you in a while, so I had a lot to say.
He must understand that we are trying to go incognito. So it's kind of him not to point out that our vehicle and attire are completely unsuited for that to that goal as he enters the limousine. He sits and does not even wait until the door is closed before getting to the point.
I found out quite a bit regarding the case you made me look into. First, I reviewed the report on the incidents from last year. One of the suspects mentioned the word persona.
So what went on here last year?
It's probably related, but I wasn't done there. Parts of this guy's testimony were even more outlandish. If you can take what's in the record at face value, it seems persona users can enter TVs within the Inaba region.
Enter TVs? What does that mean?
Just what it sounds like. You physically stick your body into the screen and go inside.
You can start your own talk show. Why not? It would be better than current talk shows.
He claimed there was another world in the TV, and dropping people inside it was the method behind last year's murders.
This all sounds rather absurd. I'm surprised it was included in the police report.
I got in touch with the detective in charge at the time and said the same thing.
Apparently, the report was filed by a young partner of his at the time. He'd entertained the wildest testimonies like this one.
He sounds like quite the oddball.
If this was what really went on, the police would have had no chance cracking it. But that Detective Dojima is one shrewd guy. Even with all the supernatural hocus-pocus surrounding the case, he caught the culprit.
I had asked him to collect the information about the serial murders that occurred in Inaba last year. The shadow operatives aren't public knowledge, so I thought the local police would be more willing to speak with him. But the result surpassed my expectations. Though it is slightly frustrating to already run up against something I'm powerless to achieve myself.
That's all I have for you right now. I should be going. I doubt either of us has time to reminisce over the old days. It's funny though. I thought the fighting was over, but you guys surprise me every time I see you.
Thank you very much, Officer Kurosawa. Why don't we at least see you off?
Oh, that's all right. I've got my own car. I doubt my department would appreciate your taste. If I ever showed up for work in something like this, I'd be the talk of the force until the day I retired.
Detective Kurosawa jokes with us before exiting the limousine, waving casually back at us. I had nothing to say to that as I watched him leave, rotating his shoulders to work out some kinks. Igus, though, felt the need to comment.
Mitsuru-san, this could be bad. Our sense of social aptitude is in question.
They keep hazing her about the limo.
Can't deny that.
What should we do now?
Yes. First, we'll need to test the claim that Persona users can enter TVs.
We're at a junkyard, after all, and I can see a number of consumer electronics that have been discarded illegally. Igus looks around and then points to a certain pile as she gets out of the car.
There's a discarded TV over there. If the environment does not matter, we can use it to test the phenomenon.
Wait, Igus.
Don't worry. I'm just going to touch it.
That's not what I was worried about. Igus isn't wearing anything like a disguise, and... No, I'm overthinking this. We've already attracted enough attention. Even if we leave now, without doing anything, our picture could still end up on the internet. Let them gossip about the strange people in funny clothes. It'll become some urban legend. My mind made up. I step outside wearing my special equipment. Once Igus sees that I followed her, she gives a small nod and stretches her hand out towards the screen.
Amazing.
Her hand. It's inside the TV screen. But the screen itself seems undamaged. Igus and is swallowed up to her wrist, as if she put it into a bucket.
It's exactly as the police report said. What's it like inside? Do you feel anything?
Not particularly. No. Wait a moment. It's the same as mine. It's hard to say definitively since this is my first encounter with it, but I believe this reading is from a personality module.
Does that mean our retrieval target is inside the TV?
Huh. Sounds like fun.
That voice from above. It sounds very familiar. But all I see in the direction from where it came is a man in an outlandish red cape. I hesitate for a moment. Could it be?
Is that Akihiko?
The man leaps from the stacked tower of TVs like an acrobat.
Show up at the rendezvous point, so I went looking and found you here. This whole TV thing is pretty interesting.
In spite of myself, I bury my face in my palm.
Akihiko, what on earth are you wearing? What were you doing overseas?
Well, didn't I tell you that I was on a training expedition?
He just needed to show off with his his massive pecs, you know? Really shows gains.
Don't tell me you came here from the airport like that. Does the concept of keeping a low profile mean nothing to you?
Nope.
Mitsuru-san, I believe we have lost the right to complain about that.
That's it. I'm never mentioning the subject of our appearance again.
Anyway, we can go inside from that TV, right? What are we waiting for?
Still the same Akihiko. We don't know the situation inside yet, and we'll need a secure means of getting out.
So what? If we want to get this Labrys back, someone has to go inside, right?
Well, that's...
Our target hijacked a plane to throw her into a TV in this town. If we sit on our hands, it's possible we'll be put in serious danger.
Akihiko's right. That's exactly why we've been trying to act as quickly as possible since this case began.
How we used to be. We made the choice to fight shadows as professionals. That's why I traveled around the world and trained harder than ever. And now that something's actually come up, you're hesitating? We agreed to do this. I'm ready to stake my life on the mission.
Recklessly afraid to state his honest opinion. Recklessly unafraid to state his honest opinion. Again, change the context of that entirely. Classic Akihiko. He must understand that that is his role. Certainly, there are times when I need such opinions. And it's been a while since he went to Broad. I think I can understand his current mindset.
All right. Wait right here. I need to go make a phone call first.
Okay, but make it quick.
He honestly doesn't have to tell me twice. I take out my phone and bring up the contact list. A world inside a TV. I don't know what it might be like in there, but I do know someone that could help us. I was originally going to ask for their help after Labrys was secure, but perhaps the time has come. Now I've taken all possible precautions. The rest is a test of our resolve.
The other members will wait here in the car.
Yeah. If we all barge in and something happens, we'll be devastated.
Now that you mention it, at least one of us should be staying behind as well.
I am not staying.
Us three will be plenty. We'll end this in a flash. No problem.
The same as always. Although, we have no idea what might be waiting for us on the other side.
Oh boy, do you not know.
Right.
This situation, it brings back memories.
Ready!
CPU usage 23%. Goddamn. Why is it so high?
Why enter the TV? What's going on?